there to be any mistake about it in case there is. I will veto any more income tax increases that come before me.
Today, Governor Christie delivers his State of the State speech, but was he talking to New Jersey residents or voters in Iowa and New Hampshire?
I will never, ever stop fighting for our New Jersey renewal.
But was it more about what he avoided than what he said that is now causing a stir? That and more with the Roundtable. Republican strategist Stephen Soam, Democratic strategist Adam Silverstein, Sabeel Marcellus of Chasing, and media analyst Steve Adubato. It's all ahead on New Jersey Now.
And God bless the great state of New Jersey.
Welcome to New Jersey Now. I'm Jim McQueeny, and we're going to talk a lot about Chris Christie this show, and we're going to talk about the state of the state. But first, before we do that with our roundtable, I want to talk to Steve Adubato, who is the well-known to everybody in New Jersey, of course, but also author of a book, You Are the Brand. Wanted to talk. You had a special one-on-one interview, privileged as you are, because he hasn't met with the State House press in general since the fall. But you had a one-on-one that I found very intriguing, your interview with the governor. You asked a lot of good questions. There's a lot of similarity to what he was saying at the State of the State here. Let me reverse that and come back to one issue on the conversation here. And let's take a look at this. It's a conversation with Steve asking the governor about his presidency.
Is it right for me? Is it right for my family? Is it right for the country?
How much, if at all, does it matter to you that your good friend and someone you respect a great deal, Jeb Bush, has made it clear that he looks like he may run?
It's not one of the three questions.
All right. Talking about the decision process, he talked about his family, he talked about himself, he talked about the country. Steve, you didn't say anything about the citizens of New Jersey who are paying him $175,000 to run the state on the job here. Aren't they going to be asked in some way about whether he should run for president?
I think he may have implied that, or put it this way, Jim.
Well, it must have been edited out because I didn't hear it.
Let's get through this, Jim. He's running. We know he's running. You do not make the speech that he made in the State of the State, which I'm sure we'll be talking about, obviously, and you don't talk about the fact that I heard from people in one state or another, and an 82-year-old woman in Florida came to me and said, Governor, you know, what happened to our country? You don't do those things if you're not running for president. You sit across from him and you sense he's running for president. You just know it. So I understand his explanation, but he's running.
You asked a good question on this thing because it's a question everybody else is asking. And let's go to this. You asked him about, did he have the personal constitution, if you will, maybe patience or something?
I said demeanor.
Demeanor was the good word for it, but let's take a look at what the governor answered.
If people want somebody different than if I ever ran for president, then they'd vote for somebody different. But I don't intend to become a phony.
All right, Steve, a lot of people are saying about this, is he just too rough around the edges with his demeanor, or is it rough around the edges with his record?
I'm a big person on demeanor. Look, record matters, and the governor, on several issues, when I asked him about it, said, look, if I run for president, I'll answer those questions. When I talked about gun control, he gave me a little bit, but he said if I run for president, I'll be more specific. He said he'll be more specific on a whole range of issues if I run for president. But to me, Jim, I have to tell you, I believe the demeanor issue is critically important because I said to the governor, or I asked the governor, don't you think it would be different running for president in terms of the pressure, the kinds of questions you'd be asked, the kinds of sensitivities that would come up? He said, no, press house, and the governor, being the governor and the State House press corps, they press you. And I'm thinking, it's got to be more pressure-filled than that. He said no. He also said he wouldn't become a phony. He said, I'm not changing anything about myself because if I were to do that, I'd be a phony. I pressed back and said, would it be being a phony if you tweak something about yourself or tried to improve? And he said, if I were to do that, I wouldn't tell you about that. It got pretty, testy. He said, I wouldn't tell you about that because then you'd say, or they take a clip out of context saying, look at Christie, he's trying to change, he's not happy with himself. He is very confident about who he is, Jim, what he is, and I got to tell you, come hell or high water, he's not changing. So whether people vote for him or not, I don't think you're going to see a different Chris Christie on that trail.
Well, let's go to the state of the state here, because I didn't see a Chris Christie that was different in that speech than it was from your interview. And one common thing was, Steve, he ducked a lot of questions in detail with you, and he ducked a lot of questions of any substance here in the state of the state speech when he gave it. Now, mind you, let's be fair, the state of the state speech is what they call the romance speech. You talk about direction, you
as
talk
opposed
about
to the budget speech,
which is the finance speech.
Yeah.
But when you saw the state of the state speech on here, what did you see? Was he talking to a nation, or was he talking to a state?
I think he was trying to do both. I think he was trying to talk to people in New Jersey because he has to. It's a responsibility constitutionally. But clearly he was talking to certain segments of the Republican Party, more specifically, those who are deciding where they're going to put their money. Jeb Bush is in this thing. There are folks who are going to decide, is it Jeb Bush or is it Chris Christie? Mitt Romney's in this thing. That's the three-way race.
You're a communications expert, right?
Yeah.
And a respected one. How does a political official like the governor stand with one leg on a presidential ice floe and one leg on the state, and the state pays him to keep both feet on that?
Jim, how do you do it? You know, in a very difficult fashion. I believe the governor, sooner or later, is going to have to decide what track he's on. He's convinced himself, I believe this, that he can govern effectively and run for president. I think it's going to be more difficult than he thinks. But I tell you, I've never seen someone who has more confidence in himself than this guy.
But the people don't seem to have the confidence at this point. There's a
I've seen the numbers too.
Well, yeah, look at the numbers on one thing. After 5 years, the FDU Public Mind poll just out said that after 5 years, nearly, I think it was about 75% said they don't feel the average person was helped by the tenure of this governor. Is that how you go? How do you go?
I think the governor's concerned about
around
that.
the country.
No, listen. Is that going to be a problem for the governor? Absolutely. Is he going to say publicly that he thinks it's a problem? No. But you know in his heart of hearts he knows it's an issue. He's got to figure, look, he didn't talk about Hurricane Sandy in the state of the state. Was I disappointed about that? Yes. But I think politically they figured it wasn't a smart thing to do. But it's the right thing to do because those people are suffering.
And politically, we're going to come back with the roundtable in a minute. Steve joining us as well to get more into the details about that state of the state speech.
New Jersey and America will be a better place for middle-class families when we shrink the size of government at every level.
State of the State, or more like a practice run for State of the Union. That and more when we return. Stay tuned.